Welcome to Reiki Rising, your sacred space for energy healing, mindfulness, and transformation. I'm Raven Waterblossom, a Reiki practitioner, teacher, yoga instructor, and intuitive guide. And I'm here to support you in reconnecting with your inner light and aligning with your essence. In each episode, we'll talk about the power of Reiki and its ability to shift energy, release blockages, and promote inner healing. We'll also explore insights from a new offering, Dharma Healing, Reiki and Mindfulness for Recovery, bringing together a fusion of Reiki practices and mindfulness designed to help break free from the habit energies that no longer serve us, offering a path to recovery, renewal, and peace. Whether you're just beginning your journey or looking to deepen your practice, this is your space to heal and thrive. Let's begin. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Reiki Rising. I am your host, Raven Waterblossom, and I really am so grateful that you're here for another episode. Today, we're going to continue this journey exploring healing, empowerment, and the power and transformation that can happen with Reiki. Today, I really want to talk about a topic that is tender for a lot of us and also hopefully joyful. Embracing your inner child and how we can do this with Reiki healing. So this just isn't about just healing our old wounds. It's also about connecting with the curiosity and the playfulness and the creativity that all of us have within us, this potential to connect with. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we quiet our inner child to a voice that's very silent and what effect that has on us. So we're going to talk about exploring why it's so important to honor and create space for our inner child, especially when life shuts us down or activates old emotions or patterns, thought process. So I'm going to share a personal story about my creative process and the stories that I write, and how this is something that has been a way for me to connect with my inner child. And I didn't even come to this awareness until recently. So maybe there's a way out there that you are connecting with your inner child and you don't even realize it. And maybe this episode will illuminate that for you, and maybe it won't. But I recently came to this awareness, so I'll be sharing a little personal story there as we go through this episode today. So by the end of this episode, my hope here is that you feel inspired to meet your inner child with the support and the tools that you have here in this practice to embrace the wholeness of who you are, not just the parts. So let's pause here for a breath. Okay, another. Let's begin. I'd like to start today by talking about the inner child. What does that even mean? Our inner child is not just a metaphor for our childhood memories. This is a part of our psyche that actually holds the emotional imprints of these earlier experiences. So sometimes when we think of our inner child, we think of one particular version, one particular memory, or something that's really kind of a groove that we fall into consistently that is connected to this childhood memory. And it could be likely related to some type of traumatic event or emotional event that happened that we are connected to. So we think about our wounded inner child, I guess, when we think of inner child, for the most of us, right? But this part of us also carries our joys and our curiosity and our playfulness. But these wounds and our unmet needs and feelings of not being seen or heard are often what's at the surface and that we most often identify with our inner child. For many of us, our inner child didn't get the honoring it deserved when we were younger. Maybe we grew up in an environment where being playful or imaginative just wasn't encouraged. Perhaps you had to grow up too quickly. For me, this is true. I had to, or felt the need as a child, due to family dynamics and responsibilities and things changing in my early childhood, that seemed to be beyond my control and were beyond my control. So my inner child was kind of tucked away, put away. I felt the need to be serious, and after some rebellion, of course, I felt the need that now it's time to be serious and to figure out a life for myself and what I want that to look like at a very young age, what that looked like. So that idea that being playful or imaginative or curious, that was not something that I embraced. The part of my inner child as I was in my teenage years and in my young adulthood. I shut that off. We carry these experiences forward, shutting down that playfulness, those curious parts, because we've been conditioned to believe or received feedback that created the conditions for us to believe that they are unimportant or impractical. But our inner child never goes away. It's always there. It's waiting for us to reconnect. So maybe just pause here and think, when is the last time? What is the last thing that you did that you felt you were connecting with your inner child? And create some space here to just think about that. When is the last time that you connected with your inner child? What did that look like? So what happens here is that maybe it's hard to even think of what did I do that I was connecting with my inner child. When we ignore this inner child for too long, it can begin to show up in ways that are often unskillful. Triggers, or sometimes even creative blocks, or just tension in our bodies, in our minds. And this is where Reiki can be a really great tool for meeting our inner child and for holding space for it with compassion. So, if you are new here to this podcast, Reiki is a form of energy healing. I also talk about multi-dimensional healing modality, Shambhala, energy healing. And this works on the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual levels. So when it comes to the inner child, Reiki and energy healing can help us create a sense of safety. It can help us soothe our nervous system. We bring in mindfulness practices like breathing and awareness. It can signal to our inner child that it's safe to come forward. It's safe to be here. And then we can hold space for whatever emotions are arising. So if we find ourselves in this activated state where we are, triggered, activated in some way, something's coming alive for us. And when we can hold space, when we come into our practice and the principles and the practice of self-Reiki, we can continue to create a non-judgmental container to feel and even process those emotions that our inner child that we are carrying might be carrying with it. So reconnecting with creativity in honoring this inner child can open our energy channels and allow the playful and imaginative aspects of our inner child to flow freely. So one of the ways that I love to do this is through art. Art is something that I definitely did not engage in a lot as a child because I felt like, or at least for a long time, now I'm starting to think back and really think about the ways that I did try to express myself and I was creative in my childhood, that I, for so long thought that I wasn't, and what was supported and what was not supported. And painting or drawing, sketching, any of those things were not really something that I felt that I was good at. And as a child, it was like I was compared to others. And so that created this narrative that it just wasn't my thing and I shouldn't do it. So I kind of shut that down. So one of the ways that lots of childhood stories here, bring that in is allowing myself to play with watercolor, with painting, with oil pastels, with colored pencils, whatever it is for you that you like to play with. For a long time in my early 20s, I was thinking the other day, I'm like, what did I do? Scrapbooking was big for me. I remember when I graduated high school, a friend of mine, her parents, went to this, I think it was called, I don't know. It was one of those multi-level marketing things, but for scrapbooking. And this was in 2004, 2003, and it might even have been a little bit before that, but it was a big thing. I had this scrapbook in high school, and I would be creative about like how I designed my scrapbook pages, and that carried on into my early 20s. And then it just kind of fell off. So it was something that I didn't do anymore. And I feel like there was this period of time where I really did not connect with my inner child in any creative way. And so reconnecting with that through art has been really important. So maybe thinking here about what is a way that you could connect with a channel of creativity that is from your childhood? Was there something that you did that you really loved to do, or something you didn't do that you wanted to but didn't because you were afraid of judgment or fear was surrounding that? So maybe brainstorming a little bit there. But one of the ways that I do that through art is just giving up expectation that it has to look a certain way. I often get very caught up in this narrative that it has to be something that is a product. And I've talked about this in some ways before, talking about therapeutic art exercises and how it doesn't have to be something that you even show anyone. It's just for play. It's just for fun. One of the most recent pieces that I created, I don't often do this, use my hands instead of brushes, but I did that and it was a different experience. I really got into it and I really did enjoy it. It was fun. So I might do that more, but I'm also, that messiness, right? Art is messy. And that is something that I think, had a problem with for a while, was like creating this mess, and it was too messy and too unorganized. And then that came in as this sense of when things aren't organized, when things aren't clean and tidy, that sense of my inner child being unsafe. So there was a part for me to explore, a gateway for me to embrace my inner child and be like, I can paint and do all this and be messy, and I can be safe doing it. So some reflection there of just thinking about ways that you can reconnect with creativity to allow this playful and imaginative aspect of your inner child to come through. So I definitely encourage you to practice self-Reiki as a way to connect with your inner child. And just a simple way, if you aren't attuned to Reiki, that's okay. You know, if you are, you can incorporate any symbols or placements that you have drawn into your practice in whatever way. So just a simple way to do this, to connect with that energy. And Reiki is just life force energy. It's prana, chi, that is flowing through us, through all living beings. And everything has energy. So it's connecting with our energy and finding balance and harmony within us. So using hand placements on different energy centers in our body can really bring a focal point for that energy, and we can begin to uncover some layers that may be existing there, as well as providing a compassionate healing modality here to honor those spaces and to hold a safe space to explore. So placing your hands on your heart or your lower belly, or one on each, these areas connect to emotional safety and creativity. So as we place a hand on these spaces and we begin to just envision healing energy moving through the palms of our hands into these spaces within our body. And you can visualize this light moving through each layer, connecting directly with the root of these energy centers, and visualizing your inner child receiving the healing energy that they need. So those parts of you that are a little resistant to play or to creativity, bringing some energy into these spaces to facilitate safety and healing and integration of those parts. The next thing I would like to talk about here is the importance of play. I talked about it a little bit with, just playing with the paint and creating this last piece and just allowing myself to be free to play. Playfulness allows us to process emotions as well. So as art may not be your thing. Maybe it's dance, maybe it's movement, creating in some way, playing in some way. It allows us to process our emotions. It also allows us to explore new ideas and to connect with our creativity. We so often dismiss play as frivolous or unimportant. Think about your childhood for a moment. Play isn't just something for children. It's really a vital part of being human. But think about your childhood for a moment. Were you encouraged to play? Was your curiosity celebrated in any way? Maybe you were taught that play was a waste of time, or that you needed to focus on being serious or responsible, or you just had so much that you was on your plate that you didn't feel you had room for play. This is a narrative that I carried through. And it's also a way that, we sometimes, without taking time to explore these parts of ourselves, we do and can cause harm to others in our lives by not offering space for their playfulness, their childhood curiosity to come through. And sometimes this comes through in our parenting. As a step parent, I did do that as well. I definitely had turned off that part, and there were times where I encouraged less play, less, when it comes back to that idea that like the mess and the chaos and the disorder is all something that can't be there if I need to feel safe. And so I was repeating that cycle and that pattern without realizing it. And now in hindsight, I definitely realize where that did come into play. So maybe that was something for you. Maybe your parents were responsible for their siblings or for their household in some way. And so they thought it was a waste of time. And now you think it was a waste of time. When you were a child, you were programmed that way. And so as an adult, think about how you can reframe that, how you can heal and integrate this part of yourself. You weren't offered that space. So how can you offer and honor embracing play for your inner child now? For so many of us, our childlike essence wasn't honored. We had to grow up quickly. We lost touch with this playful, curious part of ourselves, but it is essential for healing our inner child to reconnect with this joy and this curiosity and show our inner child that their essence matters. So, as many of you know, I'm going to share another story here. I am, what I'd like to say, multi-passionate. And everything that I do is creation, right? Everything we do is creation. We create our life that we live. But I've really, found that creating through art or Reiki or recently storytelling, coming back to writing, it's a big part of my life. And it wasn't until recently that I realized how much of my creative process is actually a dialogue with my inner child. This part of me that I feel like I lost out on, that the childhood I can think now that I wish I had. The childhood I wish I had when I was a child, when I looked at other people's experiences and from a childlike mindset, thinking, I think we do this all the time. It's this comparison of, taking stock of like what I have and looking outside of myself to fulfill what I thought I needed. And often I did, I do have a lot of really good childhood memories. And most of those memories were with other families that allowed space for all of that. And where I felt like I had space to be creative and to daydream and to imagine, to have an imagination. And then, at some point I just turned that off. So, for me, it's been interesting in having this recent kind of aha moment. So I have been, throughout the years, I have come back to writing. And I don't often share my writing, but I have been more open to sharing writing lately. So I have recently been working on writing some short stories and working on my first short novel, my first novella. And I was thinking about doing this, and then I came across this writing workshop, and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, when's the last time, like I always start these books, these stories, and then I kind of stop. I run out of steam, I give up on it, I abandon it. So I have these, 3 to 4 chapters of several several books that I've started, or short stories that I've started, that have all been abandoned. So I started looking at this workshop and writing this new book, and it's something that I'm really excited about. It's an idea that I kind of like pinned for, I always get these ideas of things that I want to write about, and then I don't do it because prior to this year, this last 6 months, really, I didn't have the energetic space or the time to dedicate to this. So I have been spending more time doing this in the past several weeks. So really creating time for writing. It was something I loved doing. I loved books when I was a kid. I used to spend a lot of my free time as a young kid at the library. I lived right down the street from the library. I was lucky. It was the 90s, so your parents didn't really pay too much attention to what you were doing or where you were going. But it was close enough that I only had to cross one street to get there. And there was this big field at the time with a little path, people had walked through. And I used to run through this field, mostly because of my fear of snakes and living in this area. Rattlesnakes were prevalent in fields in this dry area. So I would run through this field, and I kind of envisioned just like my gangly child self just kind of flailing as I'm running awkwardly through this field to get to the library. And I would spend my summers and after school, and I would check out books, and I was always listening to books on tape, and really just loved these creative stories, these fictional stories, and sometimes nonfiction. But I really loved all of these stories of different times, different places, different lives. And I spent a lot of time there, and I spent a lot of time dreaming about what it would be like and envisioning that. And so I think that really formed a lot of my idea around writing, and especially as I am writing these stories now. And I even, I wanted to think about, I have all these abandoned, my graveyard of half-written novellas or short stories, not even half-written, they're barely started. And I, have them stored away in various different things. I've had different email accounts, and I was like, I wonder if I can find them, because I've started them and then left them in Google Docs, and I'm like, okay, if I go back to an old email. So the other day I did this, and I went back to an old email, and I'm like, it's so funny to me to go back and revisit some of these stories. And one in particular I came across because I was like, when's the last time I tried to write a creative story? It was a couple years ago. And then the one before that was about 10 years ago. So it had been quite a gap between me trying to really write. And there was definitely a gap of several years in there where I didn't really write anything or didn't attempt to write anything. So I couldn't even really remember what this story was about, but I went back and I looked at it and I said, this is so interesting, because the story I'm writing now is totally different, completely different. But it's funny that it begins in the year of 1992. I was 10 years old in 1992, I think. No, I was 6 or 7. So I begin these stories from my childhood. So it's interesting to go back and say, wow, that's really ingrained in my mind, is this 1992, 1993 era for me, timestamp for me, that even 10 years later, that's where I chose to begin this next story as well. So thinking back to what was happening in that time, that was probably my most playful time that I can recall, of having adventure, of, being with my friends and creating these wild adventures that we would play in the backyard or just running around. And thinking now, you wouldn't let your 7-year-old probably walk to their friend's house down several blocks, half a mile or something, quarter mile maybe. You probably wouldn't let your 7-year-old just go do that. But this was a different time. And so I used to always hang out with this one particular friend and her family. And a lot of my adventures did happen with this person and their family in my childhood. So I think back to all of these things that we would do and these creative ways that we would play. And so I think that's just such the core of my writing now is I am really passionate about writing from the perspective of my inner child, writing from the perspective of that version of me and what the world seemed like, what could be created there, what was interesting to me. I loved the Goosebumps books. Those were fun. I used to watch Are You Afraid of the Dark on Nickelodeon. All of those things are ways of connecting with my inner child essence. And so when I'm creating, I'm not just creating for myself, I'm creating for the little girl inside of me who needed these stories. It's a way of honoring her and giving her the space to really express herself. So I'm thinking of like, this is a way to create space for my inner child. So that may look different for you, but I did want to share that story just because this process has really been healing for me to reflect and to look at the creative outlets that were speaking to my inner child and honoring space for those. It's just so fun. Like, just have fun with it. Yeah, and see what comes from it. This has just been really introspective for me to think about how I can honor my inner child through this practice. So I encourage you to find ways to connect with your inner child through play and through imagination. And it may not be writing or painting or maybe it's LARPing. My wife and I went to Renaissance Fair. That was so much fun to dress up and being transported to this different time. And I know that really awakened a childlike essence within them, and they were really able to heal and connect with their inner child through that process as well. And I think a part of me, felt the same thing. We left, and it was just such a beautiful day, and I just started crying, and I was like, I don't know why I'm crying, but I think it was my inner child just releasing some of that, like, fear around playing and like I was safe to just be someone else for the day, which was something that I did when I was a kid. I used to, my friends and I had several different things that we did at that age. We pretended we were Power Rangers and played around the yard. So there were lots of ways that I, would role play as different things. So maybe LARPing is your thing. Maybe trying out for an audition for a play or taking some drama classes or something. Maybe that's something that ignites your inner child. So just thinking here on what that could be for you, spending some time there to create space for your inner child. I think I want to close today with just a simple Reiki practice to connect with your inner child. So whenever you're ready to do this, you can pause and come back. So you'll want to find a quiet space to sit or lie down comfortably. And we'll come back to that posture of placing a hand on your heart and on your lower belly. And just close your eyes here. Then take a few deep breaths, inviting Reiki energy to flow through your hands into these spaces. Come into an awareness of the heart space, connecting with the breath, and an awareness of the belly. Let it be soft. Connect here. And see if you can begin to visualize your inner child sitting with you. Maybe they're sitting in your lap, maybe they're sitting across from you, maybe they're mimicking you. What do they look like? What do they look like here? What is your version of your inner child that you are connecting with in this moment? It may change the next time you do this practice. What version of your inner child is showing up today? What do they look like? What are they wearing? How is their hair styled? Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just wild. And what emotions are they showing you? Imagine this light that's flowing through these spaces begins to radiate outwards, and it fills the entire shape of your adult body, your body that you are in here in this space. Imagine that light flowing through these spaces and extending outwards beyond the border of your body, beyond the shape of you, extending, flowing outwards to your inner child, surrounding them with warm, healing light. And you can say this out loud or to yourself. I see you. I honor you. You are safe here. Tell them. Tell your inner child, I see you. I honor you. You are safe here. When you're ready, find gratitude. Thank your inner child for showing up today, for being here with you, and then gently return to the present moment. Okay, friends, thanks for joining me today in this tender and joyful journey. As you move forward throughout your day and throughout this process, I encourage you to make space for your inner child. It can be through Reiki, through this practice. You can come back to this recording, come back to your own Reiki practice. It can be through play or creativity, but find ways to honor their essence. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to join me for the Dharma Healing Circle. We're going to be starting this in January, on January 2nd at noon Pacific Standard Time. I will be exploring themes of Reiki as it relates to Reiki and mindfulness as it relates to recovery. And recovery is expanded beyond the scope of substance abuse and misuse, but also any habit energy. So sometimes this habit energy is ignoring our inner child. So that could be part of it. So we'll be exploring the practices of Reiki, the principles of Reiki, and doing a self-Reiki practice together in community. So I invite you to join us. This is a Dana-based offering. It is as you are resourced and free, and it goes to support Soul Center Spokane and the Recovery Dharma and mindfulness practices that are offered in person and on the effort of that nonprofit. So yeah, I hope that you will join me in that new offering coming in the new year. And yeah, join me for yoga or for the solstice this month. We are having a celebration on the 21st that's available in person and online. So there's lots of ways for us to practice together. And of course, we will be back next week. So until next time, may you nurture your inner child with love, with curiosity, and with compassion. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.